This play is called Our Town. It was written by Thornton Wilder and produced by Mr. Walker Joyce. In it, you will see Mr. Wright, Mr. Bishop, Mr. Walker, Mrs. Dunbar, Mrs. Trangucci, and Mrs. Hummel, and many others too numerous to mention. The name of our town is Grover's Corners, New Hampshire, just over the line from Massachusetts. Latitude, 42 degrees, 40 minutes. Longitude, 70 degrees, 37 minutes. The first act shows a day in our town. The date is May 7th, 1901, just before dawn. Yep, just about. The morning sky is beginning to show some streaks of light in the east, back of our mountain. And the morning star always looks wonderfully bright the minute before it has to go. Well, now I'll show you how our town lies. Up here is Main Street. Cutting across it on the left are the railroad tracks. Across the tracks is Polish Town. You know, foreign people who come to work in the mill, a couple of Canuck families, and the Catholic Church. The Congregational Church is right over here. Presbyterian across the street. Unitarian and Methodist over there. The Baptist is down in the hollow by the river. Next to the post office there is the town hall. Jail is in the basement. William Jennings Bryan once made a speech from those steps right there. All along Main Street, there's a row of stores. Hitching posts and horse blocks in front of them. That first automobile is going to come along in about 5 years. Belonged to banker Cartwright, our town's richest citizen. Lives up in the big white house up there on the hill. This is the grocery store, and this is Mr. Morgan's drugstore. Most everybody in town manages to look into these once a day. This is our doctor's house, Doc Gibbs. This is the back door. There are a couple of chairs and a table for those that feel they have to have scenery. This is Mrs. Gibbs' garden. Peas, beans, corn, hollyhocks, heliotrope. And, well, a lot of burdock. In those days, our town newspaper, the Grover's Corners Sentinel, came out twice a week. This is Editor Webb's house, and this is Mrs. Webb's garden, just like Mrs. Gibbs, only she's got a lot of sunflowers and a big butternut tree right here. Nice town. You know what I mean? Nobody very remarkable ever came out of it, so far as we know. The earliest dates on the tombstones in the cemetery over there say 1670. There are Gibbses and Grovers and Cartwrights and Herseys. Same names as around here now. Well, as I said, it's early morning. The only lights on in town are over by the railroad tracks, where a Polish mother has just had twins, and in Joe Crowell's house, where Joe Jr. is getting ready to deliver the morning paper. Oh, and down at the depot, where Shorty Hawkins is getting ready to flag the 5:45 train for Boston. There she is. Naturally, out in the country, lights have been on for some time, what with milking and so on, but town folk like to sleep late. So, another day has begun. There's Doc Gibbs coming down Main Street now, coming back from that baby case. And there's Mrs. Gibbs coming downstairs to get breakfast. Oh, Doc Gibbs died in 1930. A new hospital's named after him. Mrs. Gibbs died first, actually. Long time ago, in fact. She went out to visit her daughter, Rebecca, who married an insurance man in Canton, Ohio, and died there. Pneumonia. But her body was brought back here. She's in the cemetery now, in with a whole mess of Gibbses and Herseys. She was Julia Hersey, before she married Doc Gibbs, in the Congregational Church right over there. In our town, we like to know the facts about everybody. There's Mrs. Webb coming downstairs to get breakfast, and that's Doc Gibbs. He got the call to go to Polish Town at 1:30 this morning. Here comes Joe Crowell, delivering Mr. Webb's Sentinel.
Morning, Doc.
Morning, Joe.
Do you want your paper now?
Yes, I'll take it.
Anybody been sick, Doc?
Oh, they're twins over in Polish Town. Joe, I see your teacher, Miss Foster's getting married.
Yes, sir. There's some fellow over in Canton.
I declare. How do you boys feel about that?
Well, of course. It ain't none of my business, but I think if a
I want to tell you something about that boy, Joe Crowell. Joe was awfully bright. Graduated head of his class from the high school here. Got a scholarship to go to Boston. MIT, that is. Graduated head of his class from there, too. Going to be a great engineer, Joe was. Was in the Boston papers at the time. And then the war broke out. And he died in France. Yes, sir. All that education for nothing.
Giddy up, Bessie. Oh, what's the matter now?
There's Howie Newsom delivering the milk.
Morning, Doc.
Oh, Howard.
Somebody sick?
A pair of twins over to Mrs. Scarlowski's.
Twins, huh? This town keeps getting bigger every year.
Want to rain, Howard?
No, fine day, it'll burn off. Oh, Bessie.
Hello, Bessie. How old is she, Howard?
Going on 17. Bessie's all mixed up about the root, has been ever since the Lockharts stopped taking their quart of milk every day. She wants to leave him a quart every day, just the same. Keeps scolding me the whole time.
Morning, Howie.
Morning, Miss Gibb. Doc Gibb's just coming down the street.
Is he? Seems like you're late today.
Yeah, something wrong with the separator. Don't know what it was. Doc?
Howard?
Children, time to get up.
Come on, Bessie.
Children! Everything all right, Frank?
Yes, I declare. Easy as kittens.
They're going to be ready in a minute. Sit down and drink your coffee. You can catch a few hours sleep this morning, can't you?
Let's see, Mrs. Wentworth's coming at 11. Guess I know what that's about. The stomach ain't what it ought to be.
Well, all told, you won't get more than 3 hours sleep, Frankie. I declare, I don't know what'll become of you. Do wish you'd get away someplace and take a rest. You think it'd do you good.
Emily, time to get up. Wally's 7 o'clock.
I declare you've got to speak to George. Seems like something's come over him lately. No help to me at all. Can't even get him to chop some wood.
Is he sassy to you?
No, he just whines all the time. All he seems to think about is that baseball. George, Rebecca, you'll be late for school. George!
George, look sharp.
Yes, Pa.
Don't you hear your mother calling you?
Wally, you'll be late for school.
I guess I'll go upstairs and catch 40 winks.
Wally, you wash yourself good, or I'll come up and do it myself.
Mom, what dress shall I wear?
Not a noise. Your father's been out all night and needs his rest. I washed and ironed the blue gingham for you special.
Oh, Ma, I hate that
Hush
dress.
up with ya.
Every day I go to school dressed like a sick turkey.
Now, Rebecca, you always look very nice, dear.
Just so for me.
I'll come up there and slap the both of you. That's what I'll do.
Oh, we got a mill in our town, too. Hear it? Makes blankets. The Cartwright stole it. Brought him a fortune.
Now, George, sit down and eat your breakfast. You too, Rebecca.
Children, breakfast is just as good as any other meal, and I won't have you gobbling it like wolves. It'll stunt your growth, that's a fact. Wally, put away your book.
But Ma, by 10 o'clock I got to know all about Canada.
You know rules well as I do, no books at table. As for me, I'd rather have my children healthy than bright.
I'm both, Mama. You know I am. I'm the brightest girl in school for my age. I have a wonderful memory.
Eat your breakfast.
I'll speak to your father about it after he's rested. But it seems to me 25 cents a week's enough for a boy your age. I declare I don't know how you spend it all.
Oh, Ma, I got a lot of things to buy.
Strawberry phosphates, that's what you spend it on.
I don't see how Rebecca comes to have so much money. She has more than $1.
Been saved up gradually.
Well, dear, it seems to me it's a good thing to spend some every now and then.
Mom, do you know what I love most in the world? Do you? Money.
Eat your breakfast.
Christopher's bell, gotta go.
Now walk fast, you don't have to run. Wally, pull up your back at the knee.
Tell Miss Foster I sent her my best congratulations. Can you remember that, Rebecca?
Yes, Mom.
And Rebecca, you look very nice, dear. Pick up your feet. Here, chick, 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 chick. Here, chick, 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 chick. Here. No, you go away, you. Here, chick, 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 chick. Whew. What's the matter with you? Fight. That's all you do. Here, chick, 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 chick. You don't want to mind. You go away, you. What are you looking so scared about? No one's gonna hurt you. Morning, Myrtle. How's your cold?
Well, I still get that tickling feeling in my throat. I told Charles I don't know as I'd go to choir practice tonight.
Have you tried singing over your voice?
Yes, but I can't seem to do that and stay on the key. While I'm resting myself, I thought I'd string some of these beans.
Here, let me help you. Beans have been good this year.
Yeah, I decided to put up 40 quarts if it kills me. Children say they hate them, but I notice they're able to get them down all winter.
Myrtle Webb, I gotta tell you something. I gotta tell someone or I'll burst.
Julia Gibbs.
Myrtle, did one of those second-hand furniture men from Boston come to see you last Friday?
No.
Well, he called on me. First, I thought he was a patient wanting to see Dr. Gibbs, and he wormed his way into my front parlor. And Myrtle, he offered me $350 for Grandmother Wentworth's highboy as I'm sitting here.
Julia Gibbs.
He did that whole thing, quite so big I didn't know where to put it. I almost gave it to Cousin Hester Wilcox.
Well, you're going to take it, aren't you?
I don't know.
You don't know. $350? What's come over you?
Well, if I could get the doctor to take the money and go away someplace, I'd sell it in a minute. You know, Myrtle, it's been the dream of my life to see Paris, France. It sounds crazy, I suppose, but I always promised myself if we ever got the chance...
How's the doctor feel about it?
Well, I did beat around the bush a little. I said that if I got a legacy, that's what I'm calling it, that I'd insist he take me.
And what'd he say?
You know how he is. I haven't had a serious word out of him since I've known him. No, he says, it might make him discontented with Grover's Corners to go traipsing around Europe. Better leave well enough alone, he says. Every 2 years he takes a trip to the battlefields of the Civil War. And that's enough treat for anybody, he says.
Well, Mr. Webb just admires the way Doc Gibbs knows everything about the Civil War. Mr. Webb's a good mind to give up Napoleon and move over to the Civil War. Doc Gibbs being one of the greatest experts in the country, it makes him despair.
Well, it's a fact. Dr. Gibbs is never so happy as when he's at Antietam or Gettysburg. Oh, Myrtle, the times I've spent walking over those hills, stopping at every bush and pacing it out like we was gonna buy it.
Well, Julia, if that second-hand man's really serious about buying it, you sell it. And then you'll get to see Paris all right. And then just keep dropping hints from time to time. That's how I got to see the Atlantic Ocean.
I'm sorry I mentioned it. Only it seems to me that once in a person's life before you die, you ought to go to a place where they don't talk in English. You don't even want to.
Thank you very much, ladies. Now we'll skip a few hours. But before we do, we want a little more information about our town. Kind of a scientific account, you might say. So I've asked Professor Willard of our state university to sketch in a few brief details of our past history here. Professor Willard.
I beg your pardon. Excuse me. I beg your pardon. Was that your fault?
May I introduce Professor Willard of our state university. Just a few brief words, Professor. Unfortunately, our time here is limited.
Grover's Corners. Let me see. Grover's Corners lies on the old Pliocene granite of the Appalachian Range. I may say it's some of the oldest land in the world. We're very proud of that here. Of course, there are some more recent outcroppings, sandstone showing through a shelf of Devonian basalt, and some vestiges of Mesozoic shale. But these are comparatively new, perhaps only 200 or 300 million years. Some highly interesting fossils have been found. I may say unique fossils, 2 miles north of the Peckham farm in Silas Peckham's cow pasture. These may be seen in the museum at the university at any time. That is, at any reasonable time. If I may, I wish to read some of Professor Gruber's notes on the meteorological condition. Mean precipitation.
I'm sorry, I'm afraid we don't have time for that, Professor. But we might have a few words on the history of man here.
Anthropological data.
Yes.
Early Amerindian stock. Catahatchee tribes. No evidence prior to the 10th century of this era. Now completely disappeared. Some traces in 3 families. Migration in the early 17th century of English brachiocephalic blue-eyed stock. Since then, some Slav, Mediterranean.
And the population, Professor Weldon?
Within the town limits, 2,640.
Oh, just a moment, Professor. This morning, punctual.
Oh, yes. At the moment, the population is 2,642. Yes, the postal district brings in 507 more, making a total of 3,149. Mortality, birth rates constant. By McPherson's gauge, 6.032.
Thank you very much, Professor Weldon. I'm sure that we're all very much obliged.
Oh, not at all, sir, not at all.
This way. Professor. Now.
Well, thank you very much.
Now, for the political and social report, Editor Webb. Mr. Webb?
He'll be here in a minute. He just cut his hand whilst eating an apple.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Webb.
Charles, everybody's waiting.
As you know, Mr. Webb is editor and publisher of the Grover's Corner Sentinel, our town newspaper. Mr. Webb.
Well, I don't have to tell you that we're run here by a board of selectmen. All males vote at the age of 21. Women vote indirect. We're lower middle class, sprinkling of professional men, 10% illiterate laborers. Politically, we're 86% Republican, 6% Democrat, 4% Socialist, rest indifferent. Religiously, we're 85% Protestant, 12% Catholic, rest indifferent.
Have you any comments, Mr. Webb?
Very ordinary town, if you ask me. A little better behaved than most, probably a lot duller. But our young people here seem to like it well enough. 90% of them graduating from high school settle right down here to live, even when they've been away to college.
All right. Well, does anyone in the audience have any questions that they'd like to ask Mr. Webb about our town?
Yeah, is there much drinking in Grover's Corners?
Well, sir, I wouldn't know what you call much. Saturday night, the farmhands meet down at Ellery Greeno's stable and holler some. We've got 1 or 2 town drunks, but they're always getting remorses every time an evangelist comes to town. No, sir, I'd say liquor ain't a regular thing in the home here, except in the medicine chest. Right good for snake bites, you know. Always was.
Is there no one in town who's aware?
Now, please, step forward so we can all hear you. Now, what was it you wanted to ask?
Is there no one in town who's aware of social injustice and industrial inequality?
Oh, yes, everybody is. Something terrible. Seems like they spend most of the time talking about who's rich and who's poor.
Well, then why don't they do something about it?
Well, I don't know. I guess we're hunting, like everybody else, for a way the diligent and sensible can rise to the top and the lazy and quarrelsome sink to the bottom. But that ain't easy to find. Meantime, we do all we can to take care of those who can't help themselves, and those that can, we leave alone. Are there any other questions?
Yes, Mr. Webb?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there any culture or love of beauty in Grover's Corners?
Well, ma'am, there ain't much, not in the sense you mean. Come to think of it, there's some girls that play the piano over at high school commencement, but they ain't happy about it. No, ma'am, there isn't much culture, but maybe this is the place to tell you that we've got a lot of pleasures of a kind here. We like the sun coming up over the mountain in the morning, and we all notice a good deal about the birds. We pay a lot of attention to that. And we watch the change of the seasons. Yes, everybody knows about them. But those other things, you're right, ma'am, there ain't much. Robinson Crusoe in the Bible and Handel's Lago, we all know that. And Whistler's Mother, well, those are just about as far as we go.
Thank you very much, Mr. Webb. Now, let's get back to our town. It's 2 o'clock. All 2,642 have had their lunches, and all the dishes have been washed. The children are back at school. There's a humming and buzzing coming from the school buildings. Only a few buggies remain on Main Street. Horses are dozing at their hitching posts. There's an early afternoon calm about the town. You all remember what it's like. Doc Gibbs is sitting in his office, tapping people, making them say, ah. And Mr. Webb is over there cutting his lawn. 1 man in 10 thinks it's a privilege to push his own lawnmower.
I can't, Lois. I gotta go home.
Emily, walk simply. Well, who do you think you are today?
But you're terrible. 1 minute you tell me to stand up straight, the next minute you call me names. I just don't listen to you.
Golly, I've never been kissed by such a great lady before.
Oh, excuse me, Mrs. Forrest.
Oh, you go out and play in the fields, young man. Why, you got no business playing baseball on Main Street.
Awful sorry, Mrs. Forrest.
Sorry.
Hello, Emily.
Hello.
You made a fine speech in class.
Well, I was really ready to make a speech about the Monroe Doctrine, but at the last minute, Miss Corcoran made me talk about the Louisiana Purchase instead. I worked an awful long time on both of them.
Gee, it's funny, Emily. From my window over there, I can just see your head nights when you're doing your homework over in your room.
Can you?
You certainly do stick to it. I don't see how you can sit still that long. I guess you must like school.
I always figured it's something you have to go through.
Yeah.
I don't mind it, really. Passes the time.
Yeah. Emily, what do you think? We might work out a kind of a telegraph between your window and mine, and every so often you could kind of give me a hint or two about one of those algebra problems. I don't need the answers, Emily. Of course not. Just some little hint.
I think hints are allowed. So, if you get stuck, George, you whistle to me, and I'll give you some hints.
Emily, you're just naturally bright, I guess.
I figure it's just the way a person's born.
Yeah. But, well, you see, I want to be a farmer, and my Uncle Luke says whenever I'm ready, I can come over and work on his farm. And if I'm any good at all, I can just gradually have it.
You mean the house and everything?
Yeah. Well, I better be getting back out to the baseball field. Thanks for the talk, Emily. Good afternoon, Mrs. Webb.
Good afternoon, George.
So long, Emily.
So long, George.
Emily, come help me string these beans for the winter. Well, that George Gibbs let himself have a real conversation, didn't he? Why, he's growing up. How old would George be?
I don't know.
Well, let's see. He must be almost 16.
Mama, I made a speech in class today, and I was very good.
You must recite it for your father at supper. What was it about?
The Louisiana Purchase. It was like silk off a spool. I'm gonna make speeches all my life. Mama, are these big enough?
You'll try and get them a little bigger if you can.
Mama, will you answer me a question, serious?
Seriously, dear, not serious.
Seriously, will you?
Of course I will.
Mama, am I good looking?
Yes, of course you are. Both my children got good features. I'd be ashamed if they hadn't.
No, Mama, that's not what I mean. What I mean is, am I pretty?
I've already told you yes. Now that's enough of that. You have a nice, young, pretty face. I never heard of such foolishness.
Mama, you never tell us the truth about anything.
I am telling you the truth.
Mama, were you pretty?
Well, yes, I was, if I do say it. I was the prettiest girl in town next to Mamie Cartwright.
Mama, you got to say something about me. Am I pretty enough to get anybody, to get people interested in me?
Emily, you make me tired. Now stop it. You're pretty enough for all normal purposes. Now come along and bring that bowl with you.
Mama, you're no help at all.
Now, I think this is a good time to tell you that the Cartwright interests have just begun building a new bank in Grover's Corners. Had to go to Vermont for the marble, sorry to say. And they've asked a friend of mine what they should put into the cornerstone for people to dig up 1,000 years from now. Of course, they're putting in a copy of the New York Times and a copy of Mr. Webb's Sentinel. Actually, we're kind of interested in this because some scientific fellows have found a way of painting all that reading matter with a kind of glue, a silicate glue, that'll make it keep 1,000, 2,000 years. So we're putting in a Bible, and a copy of the Constitution of the United States, and a copy of William Shakespeare's plays. I don't know, folks. What do you think? You know, Babylon once had 2 million people in it, and the only thing we know about them is the names of their kings, and some copies of wheat contracts on the sales of slaves. Yes, sir, all those families sat down to supper every night. Father came home from work, smoke went up the chimney, same as now. Even in Rome and Greece, the only thing we know about the real life of the people is what we can piece together from their poems and the comedies that they wrote for the theater back then. So, I'm going to put a copy of this play into the cornerstone, so that people 1,000 years from now will know a few simple facts about us, more than the Treaty of Versailles and the Lindbergh flight. You see what I mean? So people 1,000 years from now, this is the way we were in the provinces outside New York City at the beginning of the 20th century. This is the way we were in our growing up, and in our marrying, in our living, and in our dying. Well, let's get back to Grover's Corners. It's evening. You can hear the choir practicing in the Congregational Church. The children are all at home doing their schoolwork, and the day is winding down like a tired old clock.
All right, let's do it again. And remember, ladies, music came into the world to give pleasure. Yes. Let's do it again. Softer. Softer! Now look here, people, when you going to get it out of your heads that music's only good when it's loud? You leave loudness to the Methodists. You couldn't beat it if you tried. Now again, tenors.
Emily!
Hello?
Hello?
I can't work at all. The moonlight's so terrible.
Did you get the answer to the third problem?
Which?
The third.
Why, yes, George, that's the easiest of them all.
I don't see it. Well, can you give me a hint, Emily?
I'll tell you one thing. The answer's in the yards.
In yards? How do you mean?
In square yards.
Oh, in square yards.
Yes, George, don't you see?
Yeah.
In square yards of wallpaper.
Oh, God, in square yards of wallpaper. Thanks a lot, Emily.
You're welcome. Isn't the moonlight terrible? Choir practice going on. I think if you hold your breath, you can hear the train all the way to Contacoo. Hear it.
What do you know?
Well, I guess I'd better get back and try to work.
Good night, Emily, and thanks.
Good night, George.
George, could you come down a minute? That's better. But it ain't no miracle. Now, before I forget, how many of you can be here next Tuesday afternoon to sing at Fred Hesse's wedding? Let's see a show of hands. All right, that's good. That's real nice. Now, art thou weary? Art thou languid? It's a question, ladies and gentlemen. Make it talk. And remember, take that second verse real soft. Make it die out on the end. Ready?
Make yourself comfortable, George. I'll only keep you a minute. George, how old are you?
Me? I'm 16. Almost 17.
And what do you want to do when school is over?
Well, you know, Pa, I want to be a farmer on Uncle Luke's farm.
Oh, and you'll be willing, will you, to get up early to milk and feed the stock, and you'll be able to hoe and hay all day?
Of course I will. What do you mean, Pa?
Well, George, while I was in my office today, I heard a funny sound. And what do you think it was? It was your mother chopping wood. There you see your mother getting up early, cooking meals all day long, washing and ironing, and still she has to go out in the backyard and chop wood. I guess she just got tired of asking you. She just gave up and decided it was easier to do it herself. And you eat her meals, put on the clothes she makes nice for you, and run off and play baseball, like she's some hired girl we keep around the house, but that we don't like very much. Well, I knew all I had to do was call your attention to it. Here's a handkerchief, son. George, I've decided to raise your spending allowance 25 cents a week. Not, of course, for chopping wood for your mother, because that's a sort of a present that you give her. But because you're getting older, and I imagine there are things you must find to do with it.
Thanks, Pa.
Let's see, tomorrow's payday. You can count on it. Probably Rebecca will feel that she ought to have some more, too. I wonder what could have happened to your mother. Choir practice has never been this late before.
It's only 8:30, Pa.
Don't know why she's in that old choir anyway. She hasn't any more voice than an old crow. Traipsing around the streets at this hour of the night. Well, it's just about time that you retired, don't you think?
Yes, Pa.
I'll tell Mr. Webb. I know he'll want to put it in the paper.
My, it's late. Real nice choir practice, wasn't it? Myrtle Webb, look at that moon, will you? Potato weather for sure.
Naturally, I didn't want to say anything in front of the others. Well, now that we're alone, it is just the worst scandal ever to hit this town.
What?
Simon Stimson.
Now, Luella.
Now, Julia. I mean, for a choir master to drink and be drunk year after year.
Luella.
Julia, you know he was drunk tonight.
Now, Luella, we all know about Simon Stimson, and we all know about the trouble he's been through. Dr. Ferguson knows too. And if Dr. Ferguson keeps him honoring his job there, the only thing the rest of us can do is not to notice it.
Not to notice it? Julia, it's getting worse.
No, it isn't, Luella. It's getting better. I've been in that choir twice as long as you have, and it doesn't happen anywhere near so often. My, I hate to go to bed on a night like this. Gracious, I better hurry. Those children will be sitting up till all hours. Good night, Luella, Julia.
Night, Myrtle. Can you get home safe, Luella?
It's bright as day out. Oh, I can just see Mr. Soames scowling out through that front window. You think we've been to a dance the way the men folk carry on? Good night, Julia.
Night, Luella.
See you on Saturday.
I'll see you then. We had a real good time.
You're late enough.
Now, Frank, it ain't any later than usual.
And you stopped at the corner to gossip with a lot of hens.
Now, Frank, don't be grouchy. Come on, smell my heliotrope in the moonlight. Come on. Isn't that wonderful? What did you do all the time I was away?
I read, as usual. What were you girls gossiping about tonight?
Oh, believe me, Frank, there was something to gossip about.
Simon Simpson's far gone, was he?
Worst I ever seen him. How'd that end, Frank? Dr. Ferguson can't forgive him forever.
I guess I know more about Simon Simpson's affairs than anybody in this town. And some people ain't made for small town life. I don't know how that's going to end, but there's nothing for us to do but to leave it alone. Now, get in.
Oh, not yet, Frank. I'm worried about you.
What are you worried about?
Well, I think it's my duty to see you get a real rest and change. And if I get that legacy, I'm going to insist on it.
Come on, Julia, there's no sense in going over that again.
Oh, Frank, you're being unreasonable.
Come on, Julia, it's getting late. And before you know it, you'll be catching cold. Oh, and I gave George a piece of my mind tonight. I guess you'll be getting your wood chopped for a while anyway.
Goodness gracious.
No, start getting upstairs.
Always something to pick up around there, seems like. You know, Frank, Mrs. Fairchild locks her front door every night. All those people up that part of town do.
They're all getting citified. That's the trouble with them. And they haven't anything fit to burgle, and everybody knows it.
Get out, Rebecca. There's only room for one at this window.
Well, let me just look a minute.
Use your own window.
I did, but there's no moon there. George, do you know what I think? Do you? I think maybe the moon's getting near and there'll be a big explosion.
Rebecca, you don't know anything. If the moon were getting nearer and nearer, the men that sit up all night with telescopes would see it, and they would tell us about it. I mean, it'd be in all the newspapers.
George, is the moon shining on South America, Canada, and half the whole world?
Well, probably is.
It's 9:30. Most of the lights in town are out. There's Constable Warren trying a few doors on Main Street. And there's Editor Webb coming home after putting his newspaper to bed.
Good evening, Bill.
Evening, Mr. Webb.
Quite a moon.
Yeah.
All quiet tonight?
Oh, Simon Stimson's rolling around a little. I just saw his wife moving out to hunt for him, so I looked the other way. He'll be along in a minute.
Good evening, Simon. Town seems to have settled down for the night pretty well. Good evening. Yes, most of the town's settled down for the night, Simon. I guess we better do the same. Can I walk along a ways with you? Good night.
Don't know how that's going to end, Mr. Webb.
Well, he's seen a peck of trouble, one thing after another. Oh, Bill, if you see my boy smoking cigarettes, just give him a word, will you? He thinks a lot of you, Bill.
I don't think he smokes no cigarettes, Mr. Webb. Leastways, not more than 2 or 3 a year.
I hope not. Good night, Bill.
Night, Mr. Webb.
Who's that up there? Is that you, Myrtle?
No, it's me, Papa.
Why aren't you in bed?
I don't know. I can't sleep yet, Papa. The moonlight's so wonderful. And the smell of Mrs. Gibbs' heliotrope. Can you smell it?
Yes. Haven't any troubles on your mind, have you, Emily?
Troubles, Papa? No.
Well, don't let your mother catch you. Good night, Emily.
Good night, Papa.
I never told you about that letter that Jane Crawford got from her minister when she was sick. He wrote Jane a letter, and on the envelope, the address was like this. It said, Jane Crawford, the Crawford Farm, Grover's Corners, Sutton County, New Hampshire, the United States of America.
What's funny about that?
But listen, it's not finished. The United States of America, continent of North America, Western Hemisphere, the Earth, the solar system, the universe, the mind of God. That's what's said on the envelope.
What do you know?
Yeah, but the postman wrote it just the same.
What do you know?
That's the end of the first act, friends. You can go out and smoke now. Those that smoke. Well, 3 years have gone by. The sun has come up over 1,000 times. Summers and winters have cracked the mountains a little bit more. The rains have brought down some of the dirt. Some babies that weren't even born before have begun talking regular sentences already. And a number of people who thought they were right young and spry and found they can't bound up a flight of stairs like they used to without their heart fluttering a little. All that can happen in 1,000 days. Nature has been pushing and contriving in other ways, too. A number of our young people fell in love and got married. Yes, a few fractions of an inch have been bitten off the mountains, millions of gallons of water have passed by the mill, and here and there, a new home is set up under a roof. You know, almost everybody gets married. In our town, there aren't hardly any exceptions. Most everybody climbs into their graves married. Well, if the first act was called The Daily Life, this act is called Love and Marriage. So, it's 3 years later. It's 1904. It's July 7th, just after high school commencement. That's the time most of our young people jump up and get married. As soon as they finish their last examinations in solid geometry and Cicero's orations, seems they feel themselves fit to get married. It's early morning again, only this time, it's been raining. It's been pouring and thundering. Mrs. Gibbs' garden there and Mrs. Webb's drenched. All those pea vines and bean poles drenched. All day yesterday, over there on Main Street, the rain looked like curtains being blown along. Don't know now. May begin again any minute. There's the 5:10 train for Boston. And there's Mrs. Gibbs and Mrs. Webb coming downstairs to get breakfast, just as if this were an ordinary day. You know, I don't have to point out to the women in the audience that both these ladies they see before them, both these ladies have cooked 3 meals a day, one of them for 25 years, the other for 20, raised 2 children apiece, washed and cleaned the house, and never had a nervous breakdown, never thought themselves hard used either. It's what one of those Middle West poets once said. You've got to love life to have life. And you've got to have life to love life. It's what they call a vicious circle.
Yeah, Bessie.
There's Howie Newsom and Bessie delivering the milk. And there's Cy Crowell delivering the paper just like his brother before him.
Morning, Howie.
Morning, Si. Anything in the paper I ought to know?
Oh, not much, except we're losing about the best baseball pitcher Grover's Corners ever had.
Yep, record he is.
And now all we do is pitching hay.
Whoa, Bessie. I guess I can stop and talk if I got a mind to.
He could hit, too, and run bases.
Yep, mighty fine ball player.
I don't see how he could give up a thing like that just to get married. Would you have, Howie?
Can't tell, Si. Never had no talent that way.
Morning, Howie.
Morning, Bill. You're up early.
Morning, Mr. Warren.
Seeing if there's anything I can do to prevent a flood. The river's been rising all night.
Well, Si Crowell here is all worked up about George Gibbs retiring from baseball.
Yes, sirree, that's the way it goes. In '84, Si, we had a player. Even George Gibbs couldn't have touched him. Name Hank Todd. Went on down to Maine and became a parson. Wonderful ball player. Howie, how's that weather seem to you?
Oh, not too bad. Maybe it'll clear up for good. Bill?
Howie.
Morning, Miss Gibbs.
Morning, Howie.
Too bad about the weather, but been coming down so hard, maybe it'll clear up for good.
Certainly hope it will.
How much you need today?
Well, I'm going to have a house full of relations. Seems to me like I'll need 3 of milk and 2 of cream.
3 of milk, 2 of cream. Oh, the wife says to tell you special how much we both hope they'll be very happy, and we know they will be.
Thank you, Howie. Tell your wife I hope she makes the wedding.
Oh, she'll be there. She'll be there if she can.
Good morning, Mr. Newsom.
Morning, Miss Webb.
I know I told you 4 quarts of milk, but I hope you can spare me another.
And 2 of cream.
Will it start raining again, Howie?
Well, I was just talking to Miss Gibbs, saying how it might let up for good. The wife says to tell you special how much we both hope they'll be very happy. No, they will be.
Well, thank you and thank Mrs. Newsom. We're counting on seeing you at the church.
Oh, we'll be there. We couldn't miss that. Come on, Betsy.
Well, Ma, the day has come. You're losing one of your chicks.
No, not another word, Frankie. I feel like crying every minute. Sit down and drink your coffee.
Groom's up there shaving himself. Only there's not an awful lot to shave. Singing and whistling to himself like he's glad to be leaving us. And every now and then he says, I do, to the mirror. But it don't sound convincing to me.
I declare, Frank, I don't know how he'll get along. All his life I've arranged his clothes, seen to it, his feet are dry, and he's got warm things on. They're too young. Emily will never see to such things. He'll catch his death of cold within a week.
I remember my wedding morning, Julia.
Now don't start, Frankie.
I was the scariest young fellow in the whole state of New Hampshire. I thought I'd made a mistake for sure. When I saw you coming down that aisle, I thought you were the prettiest girl I had ever seen. The only trouble was I'd never seen you before. There I was in the Congregational Church marrying a total stranger.
And how do you think I felt? Weddings are perfectly awful things. Farces, that's what they are. Now here, I made you something.
Julia Hussey, French toast?
Well, it ain't hard to make, and I had to do something.
How'd you sleep last night, Julia?
I heard a lot of the hours struck off.
I get a shock every time I think of George setting out to be a family man, that great gangling thing. I tell you, Julia, there is nothing so terrifying in the world as a son. The relationship of a father and a son is the damnedest, awkwardest.
Mothers and daughters ain't no picnic either, let me tell you.
They'll have their troubles, I suppose, but that's none of our business. Everybody has a right to their own troubles.
People are meant to be 2 by 2 in this world. It ain't natural to be lonesome.
You know one of the things I was scared of when I married you, Julia?
Go on with you, Frank.
I was afraid we didn't have material for conversation last us more than a few weeks. I thought we would run out and have to eat our meals in silence. That's a fact. Well, you and I have been conversing for 25 years now without any noticeable barren spells.
Good weather, bad weather. It ain't always choice, but I always find something to say. Did you hear Rebecca stirring around up there?
No. Only day of the year she hasn't been managing everybody's business up there. She's hiding in her room. I got the idea she's crying.
Lord's sakes, this has got to stop. Rebecca! Rebecca, come down and eat your breakfast.
Good morning, everybody. Only 4 more hours to live.
George Gibbs, where you going?
Just stepping across the grass to see my girl.
Put your rubbers on, it's raining torrents. You don't leave this house without you prepare for it.
Ma, it's just a step.
You'll catch your death of cold and cough all through the service.
George, do as your mother tells you.
From tomorrow on, you can kill yourself in all weathers, but while you live in this house, you'll learn wisely, thank you. Perhaps Mrs. Webb isn't used to callers at 7 in the morning. Here, take this coffee first.
Back in a minute. Good morning, Mother Webb.
Good morning, George. Goodness, Frank. Now, George, I hate to say it, you can stand here a minute out of the rain, but you understand I can't ask you in.
Why not?
Now, George, you know as well as I do, the groom can't see his bride on his wedding day, not until he sees her in church.
That's just a superstition. Good morning, Mr. Webb.
Good morning, George.
You don't believe in that superstition, do you?
There's a lot of common sense in superstitions, George.
Millions have followed it, George, and don't you be the first to fly in the face of custom.
How's Emily?
She hasn't waked up yet. I haven't heard a sound out of her.
Emily's asleep?
Well, no wonder we were up till all hours, packing and sewing. Now, George, I tell you what I'm going to do. You come sit here a minute with Mr. Webb and drink this cup of coffee, and I'll run upstairs and see she don't come down and surprise you. There's some bacon, too. Don't be long about it.
Well, George, how are you?
I'm fine. Mr. Webb, what common sense could there be in a superstition like that?
Well, George, on the wedding morning, the girl's head's full of, clothes and one thing and another. Don't you think that's probably it?
Yes. Yes, I never thought of that.
Girls have to be a mite nervous on her wedding day.
I wish a person could get married without all that marching up and down.
Every man that's ever lived has felt that way, George. It's the women folk who built up weddings, my boy. For a while now, the women have it all their own. A man looks pretty small at a wedding, George. All those good women standing shoulder to shoulder, making sure that the knot's tied in a mighty public way.
Well, you believe in it, don't you, Mr. Webb?
Yes. Oh, yes! Don't misunderstand me, George. Marriage is a wonderful thing. A wonderful thing. Now, don't you forget that, George.
No, sir. Mr. Webb, how old were you when you got married?
Well, you see, I'd been away to college, and I'd taken a little time to get settled. But Mrs. Webb, she wasn't much older than what Emily is. Oh, age hasn't got much to do with it, George, compared with other things. Well,
what were you going to say, Mr. Webb?
I don't know. Was I going to say something? George, I was remembering the other night the advice my father gave me when I got married. Yes. He said, Charles, he said, start right off showing who's boss. Best thing to do is give an order about something, even if it don't make any sense, just so she'll learn to obey. Yes. And then he said, if anything about her irritates you, her conversation or anything, get right up and leave the house. That'll make it clear to her. And oh, yes. He said, never let your wife know about how much money you have. Never.
Well, I couldn't exactly...
So, I took the opposite of his advice, and I've been happy ever since. So let that be a lesson to you, never to ask the advice of anybody on personal matters. George, are you going to raise chickens on your farm?
What?
Are you raising chickens on your farm?
Yes. Uncle Luke's never gone into
George,
chicken.
a book came into my office the other day on the philo system of raising chickens. I wish you'd read it. I'm thinking of beginning in a small way myself, in the backyard. I'm going to put an incubator in the cellar.
Charles Webb, are you talking about that incubator again? I thought you two'd be talking about things worthwhile.
Myrtle, if you want to give the boys some good advice, I'll go upstairs.
No, George, Emily's got to come down and have her breakfast. She sends you her love, but she does not want to see your face. Goodbye.
Bye.
Well, Myrtle, I guess you didn't know about that older superstition.
What do you mean?
Since the cavemen, no bridegroom should see his father-in-law on the day of the wedding, or near it. Now remember that.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Webb. Now I have to interrupt here again. We want to know how all this began. This wedding, this plan to spend a lifetime together. I'm awfully interested in how big things like this begin. Well, you know how it is. You're 21, you're 22, you make a couple of decisions, and then whoosh, you're 70. You've been a lawyer for 50 years, and that white-haired lady sitting next to you has had over 50,000 meals with you. How do such things begin? Well, George and Emily are going to show you now the conversation they had. When they first knew, as the saying goes, they were meant for one another. But before they do that, I want all of you to try and remember what it was like when you were very young, and particularly the days when you were first in love, when you were like a person sleepwalking. You didn't quite see the street you were walking in. You didn't quite hear everything that was said to you. You were just a little bit, well, just a little bit crazy. Will you remember that? Good. We'll be coming out of high school soon. It's 3 o'clock. George has just been elected president of the senior class. And as this is June, he'll be president of the senior class all next year. And Emily has just been elected secretary and treasurer. Yes, I think I see them coming down Main Street now.
I can't, Louise. I gotta go home. Bye. Oh, Ernestine, can you come over tonight and do Latin? Oh, isn't that sister the worst thing?
I'm sorry, Emily, I can't.
Oh, tell your mother you have to. Goodbye. Goodbye, Helen. Oh, bye,
your books home for you?
Thank you. It isn't far.
Excuse me 1 minute, will you, Emily? Say, Bob? Yeah, if I'm a little late, start practice and give Herb some long high ones.
Right, George.
Goodbye, Lizzie.
Goodbye, Lizzie.
Goodbye.
I'm awful glad you were elected too, Emily.
Thank you.
Emily. Why are you mad at me?
I'm not mad at you.
You've been treating me so funny lately.
Since you asked me, George, I might as well say it right. Oh, goodbye, Miss Corcoran.
Goodbye, Miss Corcoran.
Goodbye.
What? What is it?
I don't like the whole change that's come over you in the last year. I'm sorry if that hurts your feelings, but I've just got to tell the truth and shame the devil.
A change? Well, what do you mean?
Well, up to a year ago, I used to like you a lot. I used to watch you while you did everything, because you've been friends so long. Then you began spending all your time at baseball. And you never stopped to speak to anybody anymore. Not to really speak. Not even to your own family you didn't. And George, it's a fact, ever since you've been elected captain, you've got awful stuck up and conceited. And all the girls say so, and it hurts me to hear them say it. But I gotta agree with them a little because it's true.
Emily, I never thought that such a thing was happening to me. I guess it's hard for a fella not to have some faults creep into his character.
Well, I always expect a man to be perfect, and I think he should be.
I don't think it's possible to be perfect, Emily.
Well, my father is, and as far as I can see, your father is. There's no reason on earth why you should be.
I think it's the other way around. That boys aren't naturally good, but girls are.
Well, you might as well know right now. I'm not perfect. It's not as easy for a girl to be as perfect as a man because, well, we girls are more nervous. Oh, now I'm sorry I said all that about you. I don't know what made me say it.
Emily.
Now I can see it's not the truth at all, and suddenly I feel it's not important anyway.
Emily. Would you like an ice cream soda or something? Before you go home?
Thank you. I would.
Hello, Stu. How are you?
Fine, George.
Good afternoon, Mrs. Slocum.
Good afternoon. Hello, George. Hello, Emily. What do you have? Why, Emily, where? What you been crying about?
She got an awful scare, Mr. Morgan. The hardware store wagon nearly ran her off the road. Everybody says Tom Huckins drives like a crazy man.
Oh, here, take a good drink of water, Emily. Oh my, you look all shook up. I tell you, you've got to look both ways. Every time you cross Main Street these days, gets worse every year. Now, what do you have?
I'll have a strawberry phosphate, Mr. Morgan.
No, have a soda with me, Emily.
Well,
2 strawberry ice cream sodas, Mr. Morgan.
Right. 2 strawberry ice cream sodas. Yes, sir. I tell you, there are 225 horses in Grover's Corners this minute I'm talking to you. State inspector was in here yesterday. Next thing, they're going to bring in those automobiles. Best thing to do is just stay home. I can remember when dogs used to sleep in the middle of Main Street. And nothing ever came along to disturb them. There you are. Oh, yes, be with you in a minute, Mrs. Ellis. Now, what do you have?
they're awfully expensive.
No, don't think of that. We're celebrating our election. And then do you know what else I'm celebrating?
No.
I'm celebrating because I've got a friend who tells me all the things that ought to be told me.
Oh, George, please don't think of that. I don't know why I said it. It's not true.
No, you stick to it. I'm glad you spoke to me like you did. But you'll see, I'm going to change so quick. Oh, you bet I'm going to change. And Emily, I'd like to ask you a favor.
What?
If I go to state agriculture school next year, will you write me a letter once in a while?
I certainly will. Certainly will, George. Certainly seems like being away 3 years, you'd get out of touch with things. Maybe letters from Grover's Corners wouldn't seem so interesting after a while. Grover's Corners is in a very important place when you think of all New Hampshire. But I think it's a very nice town.
The day wouldn't come when I wouldn't want to know everything about our town. I know that's true, Emily.
Well, I'll try to make the letters interesting.
You know, Emily, every time I meet a farmer, I ask him if he thinks it's important to go to agriculture school to be a good farmer.
Why, George?
Yeah, and some of them, they say it's even a waste of time. I mean, you can get all that stuff anyway out of the pamphlets that the government sends out. And Uncle Luke is getting old. I mean, he's about ready for me to start in taking over his farm tomorrow if I could. And like you say, being gone all that time in other places and meeting other people, gosh. If anything like that can happen, I don't want to go away. I guess new people probably aren't any better than old ones. I'll bet they almost never are. Emily, you're as good a friend as I've got. I don't need to go to other towns and meet other people.
But George, maybe it's very important for you to go and learn all that about cattle judging and soils and those things. Of course, don't know.
Emily, I'm going to make up my mind right now. I won't go. I'll tell Pa about it tonight.
George, I don't see why you had to decide right now. It's a whole year away.
I'm glad you spoke to me about that fault in my character. What you said was right. But there was one thing wrong in it, and that's when you said I wasn't noticing other people. And you, for instance. Well, you said you were watching me when I did everything. Well, I was doing the same about you all the time. Well, sure. I always thought about you as one of the chief people I thought about. I always made sure where you were sitting on the bleachers and who you were with. For 3 days now, I've tried to walk home with you, but something's always got in the way. Yesterday, I was waiting over by the wall for you, and you walked home with Miss Corcoran.
Oh, George, oh, life's awfully funny. How could I have known that? I thought that you wanted to spend
Listen,
all your...
I'm going to tell you why I'm not going to agriculture school. I think once you've found a person you're very fond of, I mean a person who's fond of you too, and likes you well enough to be interested in your character, I think that's just as important as school is, and even more so. That's what I think.
I think it's awfully important, too.
Emily?
Yes, George?
If I do improve and make a big change, would you be... No, I mean, could you be...
I am now. And I always have been.
I guess this is a pretty important talk we've been having.
Yes. Yes.
Wait just a minute and I'll walk you home. Mr. Morgan.
What?
I'll have to go home and get you the money to pay for this.
Why, George Gibbs. Do you mean to tell me?
Yes. Yes, but I had my reasons. Oh, here's my watch to keep until I come back with the money.
Oh, that's all right, George. Keep your watch. I'll trust you.
I'll be back in 5 minutes.
I'll trust you 10 years, George. but not a day over. Got all of your shock, Emily?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Morgan. It was nothing.
I'm ready.
Now we can get on to the wedding. There are an awful lot of things to be said about a wedding. Lots of thoughts go into a wedding. Naturally, we can't get them all into one wedding, especially not one here at Grover's Corners, where weddings tend to be mighty short and plain. Now, in this play, I take the part of the minister, which gives me the right to say a few things more. You see, for a while now, the play gets pretty serious. Some churches say that marriage is a sacrament. Now, I don't quite know what that means, but, well, I can guess. It's like what Mrs. Gibbs said a few minutes ago. People are supposed to live 2 by 2. Now, this wedding is a good one. The people are pretty young, but, well, they come from a good state, and they chose right. Of course, the real hero of this scene isn't on the stage at all, and we all know who that is. It's like what one of those Middle West poets once said. Every time a child is born into the world, it's Mother Nature's attempt to make a perfect human being. Well, we've all seen Mother Nature pushing and contriving for some time now. We all know that she's interested in quantity, but I think she's interested in quality, too. Maybe here she's trying to make another good governor for the state of New Hampshire. That's what Emily hopes. Oh, now don't forget all the other witnesses at this wedding. The ancestors. Millions of them. Most of them set out to live 2 by 2. Millions of them. Well, that's all my sermon. Wasn't very long.
I don't know why on earth I should be crying. I suppose there's nothing to cry about. This morning at breakfast it came over me. There was Emily, eating her breakfast as she's done for 17 years. And she's going out of my house. I suppose that's it. And Emily, well, she suddenly said, I can't eat another mouthful. And she put her head down on the table and she cried. Oh, I've just got to say it. There is something downright cruel about sending girls out into marriages like that. And I know it was cruel of me, but I couldn't get myself to say anything. I went into it blind as a bat myself. Oh, the whole world's wrong. That's what's the matter. There he comes.
Hey, George! Look at him, fellas. He's scared to death. Don't look so innocent, you old geezer. We know what you're thinking.
All right, that'll do. That's enough of that. Used to be an awful lot of that kind of thing in weddings in the old days. Rome, and later. Of course, we're more civilized now, so they say.
George, what's the matter?
Ma, I don't want to grow old.
George, you
Why are
wanted
you
it.
pushing me so?
George, you're a man now.
All I want is to be a fella.
Now stop. If anyone should hear you. George, I'm ashamed of you.
What? Where's Emily?
George, you gave me such a turn.
Cheer up, Ma. I'm getting married.
I've been catching my breath.
Now, Ma, you save Thursday nights. Emily and I are coming over to dinner every Thursday night. You'll see. Ma, what's wrong? Come on, we got to get ready for this.
I never felt so alone in my whole life. And George over there, I hate him. I wish I were dead.
Man,
Emily, now don't get upset.
Oh, Papa, darling, I don't want to get married.
Shh, everything's all right.
Why can't I stay for a while, just as I am? Let's go away.
No, Emily, now stop and think a minute.
Remember what you used to say all the time? And I'm sure, girl. There could be lots of places we could go to. I could work for you. I could keep house.
You mustn't think of such things. You're just nervous. Now. George, will you come here a minute? Why, you're marrying the best young fella in the world. Why, George is a fine young fella. I'm giving away my daughter, George. Think you can take care of her?
I want to, Mr. Webb. I want to try. I love you, Emily. I need you.
Well, if you love me, help me. All I want is someone to love me.
I will, Emily. I'll try.
And I mean forever, do you hear? Forever and ever.
Come, they're waiting for us. Now, you know it'll be all right.
Do you, George?
Perfectly lovely wedding. Loveliest wedding I was ever at. Oh, doesn't she make a beautiful bride?
I do.
Do you, Emily, take this man,
No,
George?
no, I've been to a nicer wedding. But I always cry. Don't know why that is, but I always cry. I just like to see young folks happy.
I do.
Isn't it just lovely?
I've married 200 couples in my day. Do I believe in it? Oh, I don't know. I suppose I do. M marries N. Millions of them. The cottage. The go-kart. The Sunday afternoon drives in the Ford. The first rheumatism. The grandchildren. The second rheumatism. The deathbed and the reading of the will. Once in 1,000 times. It's interesting.
Don't they make a lovely couple? Wasn't that just the nicest wedding you ever saw? Oh, I do think they'll be happy, don't you? Happiness, that's the important thing. I always say, the most important thing is to be happy.
That's all the second act, friends. 10 minutes intermission. 9 years have passed by, friends. Summer, 1913. Gradual changes here in Grover's Corners. Horses are getting rarer. Farmers come into town now in Fords. Everybody locks their doors at night. Haven't been any burglars, but everybody's heard about them. You'd be surprised, though. On the whole, things don't change much around here. This is a very important part of Grover's Corners. It's on a hill, a windy hill. Lots of sky and clouds, often lots of sun and moon and stars. Well, you come up here on a fine afternoon, you can see range on range of hills. Awfully blue they are. Up there by Lake Sunapee and Lake Winnipesaukee. And if you go way up, you can see the White Mountains and Mount Washington, where Conway and North Conway are. And of course, there's our favorite mountain, Mount Monadnock, right here. And all around it lie these towns: Jaffrey, North Jaffrey, Peterborough, Dublin, way down there, Grover's Corners. Yes, beautiful spot up here. Mountain laurels and lilacs. You know, I often wonder why people would want to be buried in Brooklyn or Woodlawn when they could pass the same time up here in New Hampshire. Old stones are over here, 1670 to 1680. Strong-minded people came a long way to be independent. Summer folk walk around up here, laugh at the funny words on the tombstones. Doesn't do any harm. Genealogists come up from Boston, get paid by city folk to look up their ancestors. They want to be absolutely sure that they're daughters of the American Revolution or of the Mayflower. Doesn't do any harm either. There's some Civil War veterans over there. Iron flags on their graves. New Hampshire boys who had a notion that the Union ought to be kept together. Though they'd never seen more than 50 miles of it themselves, all they knew was the name, friends. The United States of America. The United States of America. And they went and died about it. Over here is the new part of the cemetery. And there's your friend, Mrs. Gibbs, and Mr. Stimpson, the choir master of the Congregational Church, and Mrs. Soames, who enjoyed the wedding so much, you remember. Lots of others. There's Editor Webb's boy, Wally, whose appendix burst while he was on a Boy Scout trip to Crawford Notch. Yes, sir. Awful lot of pain that sort of quieted down up here. People, wild with grief, bring their relatives up to this hill. And then, times. Rainy days, sunny days, snow, you know how it is. Lots of thoughts. Come up to this hill, night and day. Only there's no post office. You know, there are some things that we all know, but we don't take them out and look at them very often. We all know that something is eternal, and that something ain't houses, and it ain't names, it ain't the earth, it ain't even the stars. But deep in our bones, we all know that something is eternal. And that something has to do with human beings. The greatest people that ever lived have been telling us this for 5,000 years. Yet you'd be surprised how often we keep letting go of that fact. There is something eternal way down deep about every human being. You know, the dead don't stay interested in us living people very long. Gradually they let go hold of the earth. And the ambitions they had, and the pleasures they had, people they love. And the pains they've suffered. They get weaned away from it. That's the way I put it. Weaned away. Yes, sure, the earth part of them stays here a while, till it gets burned away, burned out. But all that while, they're slowly getting more indifferent to what's going on down in Grover's Corners. They're waiting. They're waiting for something they feel is going to happen. Something important, something great. Aren't they waiting for that eternal part to come out in them clear? Well, some of the things they're going to say are going to hurt your feelings. That's the way it is. Mother and daughter, husband and wife, enemy and enemy, money and miser. All those terribly important things kind of grow pale around here. And what's left? What's left? When your memory's gone. And your identity. Mrs. Smith? Well, here are some living people. That's Joe Stoddard, our undertaker, come to supervise the new made grave. And there's Sam Craig, the Grover's Corners boy, who left town and went out west.
Good afternoon, Joe Stoddard.
Good afternoon. Well, good afternoon.
Let me see now. Do I know you?
Sam Craig.
Gracious sakes alive of all people. I should have known you'd be back for the funeral. You've been away a long time, Sam.
Yes, I've been away 12 years now, Joe. Well, I'm in business out in Buffalo, but I was in the East when I got word of my cousin's death, and I thought I'd combine things a little and see the old home. You look well.
Oh, yes, yes, can't complain. Very sad, our journey today, Samuel.
Yes.
I always say I hate to supervise when a young person's been taken. They'll be here any minute. I had to come down here early today. My son is supervising at the home.
This is my Aunt Julia's grave. I'd forgotten she'd... Of course, of course.
Yes, Doc Gibbs lost his wife 2-3 years ago now, about this time. Today is another bad blow for him, too.
It's my sister Carrie's boy, Sam. Sam Craig.
I'm always uncomfortable when they're around.
Simon.
Do they choose their own verses much, Joe?
Oh, no, not usual. Mostly the bereaved pick a verse.
Well, this does not sound like my Aunt Julia. I guess there aren't many of the Hersey sisters left. I'd like to see my father and mother.
Over there with the Craigs, Avenue F.
He was a church choir master. Drank a lot, we used to say.
Oh, nobody was supposed to know about it. He'd seen a peck of trouble. Took his own life, you know. Did he? Hung himself in the attic. They tried to hush it up, but of course it got around. He chose his own epitaph. You can see it there. It ain't a verse exactly.
Just some music notes. What is it, Joe?
Oh, I wouldn't know. It was wrote up in the Boston papers at the time.
What'd she die of, Joe?
Who?
My cousin?
Oh, didn't you know? She had some trouble bringing a baby into the world. It was her second, though. There's a little boy about 4 years old. Oh, I see they're coming. May I?
Who is it, Julia?
My daughter-in-law, Emily Webb.
Goodness, it must have been awfully muddy coming up here. What'd she die of, Julia?
In childbirth.
Childbirth. Huh, I'd forgotten about that. Wasn't life awful and wonderful?
Wonderful, was it?
Simon. Now remember.
I remember Emily's wedding. Such a beautiful wedding. And I remember her giving the class poem at the graduation exercises. Oh, she was the smartest girl to ever graduate from that high school. I heard Principal Wilkins say so time after time. Visited them at the farm just before I died. Such a beautiful farm.
I always liked that hymn. I was hoping they'd sing a hymn.
Hello.
Hello, Emily.
Hello, Emily.
Hello, Wally. Mother Gibbs?
Emily.
Hello. It's raining.
Yes, dear. They'll be gone soon. Rest yourself.
Seems thousands and thousands of years since Papa remembered that that was my favorite hymn. Wish I'd been here a long time. Don't like being new here. Oh, hello, Mr. Simpson.
How do you do, Emily?
Mother Gibbs, George and I have made that farm into just the best place you ever saw. We thought of you all the time. We wanted to show you the new barn and a great long cement drinking fountain for the start. We bought that out of the money you left us.
I did.
Yes, Mother Gibbs, don't you remember the legacy you left us? Why, it was over $350.
Yes. Yes, dear.
There's a patent device on this drinking fountain so that it never overflows, Mother Gibbs, and it never sinks below a certain mark they have there. It's fine. Won't be the same to George without me. But it's a lovely farm. Blind people don't understand, do they?
No, dear. Not very much.
They're sort of shut up in little boxes, aren't they? I feel as though I knew him last 1,000 years ago. My boy is spending the day at Mrs. Carter's. He loves it there. Mother Gibbs, we have a Ford, too. Never gives any trouble. I don't drive, though. Mother Gibbs, when does this feeling go away of being one of them?
Wait. Be patient.
I know. Shh. Look. They're finished. They're going. Look. It's Father Gibbs. He's bringing some of my flowers to you. He looks just like George, doesn't he? I never realized before how troubled and how in the dark light persons are. Look at him. I loved him so. From morning till night, that's all they are, trouble.
Bit cooler than it was.
The rain's cooled it off a little.
Well, those nor'easters are all the same. If it ain't rain, it's a 3-day blow.
But Mother Gibbs, one can go back. One can go back there again and to live, and I feel it, I know it. Why, just then for a moment I was thinking about the farm. And for a minute I was there, and my baby was on my lap as plain as day.
Yes, you can, dear.
And I can go back and live all those days over again. Why not?
All I can say is don't.
But it's true, isn't it? I can go and live back there again.
Yes, some have tried, but they soon come back here.
Don't do it, Emily.
Don't, Emily. It won't be what you think.
But I won't live over a sad day. I'll choose a happy one. I'll choose the day I first knew that I loved George. Why should that be painful?
You not only live it, but you watch yourself living it.
Yes?
And you see what they down there will never see. You see the future. You know what's going to happen afterwards.
But is that painful? Why?
That isn't the only reason you shouldn't do it, Emily. When you've been here longer, you'll see that. Our life here is to forget all that, to think of only what's ahead, and be ready for what's ahead. When you've been here longer, you'll know that.
Mother Gibbs, how can I forget that life? It's all I know. It's all I had.
Don't do it, Emily. It isn't wise. Really, it isn't.
But it's something I must know for myself. I'll choose a happy day anyway.
No. At least choose an unimportant one. Choose the least important day of your life. It'll be important enough.
Can't be since I was married. Or since the baby was born. I can choose a birthday, can't I? I choose my 12th birthday.
All right. It's February 11th, 1899. A Tuesday. Any particular time of day?
Oh, I want the whole day.
We'll begin at dawn. You remember it had been snowing for several days. It had just stopped the night before. They'd begun clearing the roads, and the sun is coming up.
There's Main Street. And there's Mr. Morgan's drugstore before he changed it. And there's the livery stable.
Yes, this is 1899, 14 years ago.
Oh, that's the town I knew as a little girl. And look, there's the old white fence that used to be around our house. Oh, I've forgotten that. I loved it so. Are they inside?
Yes. Your mother will be coming down in a minute to get breakfast.
Will she?
You remember your father had been away for a couple of days. He'd just come home on the morning train.
No.
He'd been back to college to make a speech in Western New York. Clinton.
Yeah, Bessie.
There's Howie Newsom. And there's our policeman, but he's dead. He died.
Morning, Bill. You're up early.
Been rescuing a party down near froze to death. Down by Polish town there. Got drunk and lay out in the snowdrifts. Thought he was in bed when I shook him.
There's Joe Crowell.
Morning, Harry.
Morning,
Mr.
Joe.
Ward.
Morning, Joe.
Children, Emily, Wally, time to get up.
Mama, I'm here. Oh, how young Mama looks. I never knew Mama was ever that young.
You can come and rest by the kitchen fire if you like, but hurry. Good morning, Mr. Newsom.
Morning, Miss Webb.
Ooh, it's cold.
10 below over by my barn.
Think of it. Well, keep yourself wrapped up.
Come on, Bessie.
Mama, I can't find my blue hair ribbon anywhere.
Just open your eyes, dear, that's all. I laid it out for you special on the dresser there. If it were a snake, it would bite you.
Morning, Bill.
Morning, Mr. Webb. You're up early.
Just been back to my old college in New York State. Been any trouble here?
Called up this morning to rescue a Polish fella. Darn near froze to death he was.
You must get it in the paper.
Twant much.
Oh, good morning, Mother.
Well, how did it go, Charles?
Oh, it went fine, I guess. Well, I told him a few things. Everything all right here?
Yes, can't think of anything that's happened special. It's been right cold. Howie Newsom said it's 10 below over to his barn.
Well, it's colder than that at Hamilton College. Students' ears have fallen off. It ain't Christian. Paper have any mistakes in it?
None that I noticed. Coffee's ready when you want it. Oh, Charles, don't forget it's Emily's birthday. Did you remember to get her something?
Yes, I've got something right here. Now, where's my girl? Where's my birthday girl?
No, Charles, don't get her now. She's slow enough as it is. You can see her at breakfast. Children, it's 7 o'clock now. I don't want to call you again.
Oh, I can't bear it. They're so young and beautiful. Why did they ever have to get old? Mama, I'm here. I'm grown up. I love you all. Everything. Oh, I can't look at everything hard enough. Can I go in? Good morning, Mama.
Well, now, dear, a very happy birthday to my girl and many happy returns. There's some surprises waiting for you on the kitchen table.
Mama, you shouldn't have. I can't.
Birthday or no birthday, I want you to eat your breakfast nice and slow. I want you to grow up to be a good, strong girl. That and the blue papers from your Aunt Carrie, and I reckon you can guess who brought over the postcard album. Found it on the doorstep when I brought in the milk. George Gibbs. Must have come over pretty early in the cold. It was right nice of him.
Oh, George. I'd forgotten that.
Chew that bacon nice and slow. It'll help keep you warm on a cold day.
Mama, just look at me 1 minute as though you really saw me. 14 years have gone by. I'm dead. You're a grandmother, Mama. I married George Gibbs, Mama. Wally's dead too, Mama. His appendix burst on a camping trip to Crawford Hunt. We felt just terrible about it, don't you remember? But just for a moment now, we're all together. Mama, just for a moment, let's be happy. Let's look at one another.
That and the yellow paper, something I found in the attic among your grandmother's things. You're old enough to wear it now, and I thought you'd like it.
Oh, and this is from you. My Mama, it's lovely. It's just what I wanted. It's beautiful.
Hope you like it. I hunted all over. Your Aunt Nora couldn't find one in Concord, so I sent her all the way to Boston. Wally has something for you, too. He made it in manual training class.
Wally.
He's very proud of it, so be sure and make a big fuss about it. Father has something for you, too. I don't know what it is myself. Oh, shh. Here he comes.
Where's my girl? Where's my birthday girl?
Can't go on. It goes so fast. We don't have time to look at one another. Never realized. So all that was going on. We never noticed. Take me back up the hill to my home. But first, wait. One more look. Goodbye. Goodbye, world. Goodbye, Grover's Corner. Mama and Papa. Goodbye to clocks ticking. And my butternut tree. Mama's sunflowers. And food. And coffee. And new iron dresses and hot baths. And sleeping. And waking up. Oh, Earth, you're too wonderful for anyone to realize you. Do any human beings ever realize life while they live it? Every minute?
No. They're saints and poets, maybe. They do some.
I'm ready to go back.
Were you happy, Emily?
No. I should have listened to you. It's all human beings are, just blind people.
Look, it's clearing up. The stars are coming out.
Mr. Stimson, I should have listened to them.
Yes, now you know. Now you know what it was to be alive. To move about in a cloud of ignorance. To go up and down, trampling on the feelings of those about you. To spend and waste time as though you had 1,000,000 years. To be always at the mercy of one self-centered passion or another. Now you know. That's the happiness you wanted to go back to. Ignorance and blindness.
That ain't the whole truth, and you know it, Simon Stimson. Emily, look at that star. I forget its name.
A star's a mighty good company.
Yes, it is.
Here's another one of them coming.
That's funny. Ain't no time for him to be here.
Good gracious.
Mother Gibbs, it's George.
Shh. Rest yourself.
It's George.
Gosh, that ain't no way to behave.
He ought to be home.
Mother Gibbs,
Yes, Emily?
they don't understand, do they?
No, dear. They don't understand.
Most everybody's asleep in Grover's Corners. There are a few lights on. Shorty Hawkins has just watched the Albany train go by. And down at the livery stable, somebody's sitting up late and talking. Yes, it's clearing up. Stars are doing their old crisscross in the skies. You know, scholars haven't settled the matter yet. They seem to think there are no living beings up there. Only fire or chalk. Only this one is straining away to make something of itself. The strain is so great that every 16 hours or so, everybody has to lie down and take a rest. 11 o'clock in Grover's Corners. Everybody's resting in Grover's Corners. You'd better get a good rest too. Tomorrow's another day. Good night.